Let's go. Ah. Hello, hello, hello. How you guys all doing today? Oh man, my little dog is right here, so he's having a little chew and all that kind of stuff. So if you hear any snurfling or sniffling or any of that kind of stuff, that's my man. That's my little doggy. Uh, Got home from Capitalism today. Actually had a pretty decent weekend today. Had a pretty decent weekend this time around. I think the thing that I'm proud of myself, Anemone, absolute pleasure to see you. The thing that I'm proud of myself, I turned 40. I turned 40 on the weekend. Over this weekend, I turned 40. It really made me realize, like, this is it. This is who I am. I don't need to pretend. I don't need to feel bad about it. That's how life goes, and we find ourselves where we find ourselves. And really, I'm just going to take my own advice. It's something I say all the time, and I'm just going to be here to enjoy myself. And if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it. Simple as that. If I'm not enjoying the creative pursuit I'm doing, if I'm not enjoying the activity I'm doing, if I'm not enjoying the thing that I'm focused on, then I'm not interested in. I'm not going to do it. Thank you, Anemone. And something that I think I'm really proud of myself for this weekend, I used to work out a lot. Like, I used to be more of not a gym rat. Like, I never went to the gym. I never liked going to the gym. But I used to, I would come home from work and I would do about an hour of working out. And it was an important part of my life, and it's something that I was doing. And, COVID and just the dislocation that capitalism creates, the displacement, the destabilization of capitalism always derails. That's the first thing that always goes. If you end up getting destabilized or displaced or any of that kind of stuff, the first thing that goes are your routines or your basic sort of stuff. And I'm really proud of myself because this weekend I got back into it. And of course, I'm old now, right? So I'm 40. So it's slow going. Don't want to hurt myself. I've done that before. And it's a pretty common thing that you hear an awful lot, right? Like, people when they start working out, the very first thing that happens is they go really hard, really fast, because they're going to get really swole really fast. And they're going to pull it up, and they're going to be like, whoa! And then they hurt themselves. And I know that my left butt cheek, my left butt cheek, dude, for the next couple of days after I did my very first workout was literally like, if you had done one more squat, Jonathan, if you had done one more squat, you would have been out. You would have been in trouble. And so it's like, okay, wise idea. If you're getting started working out, and if you're just starting your life, right? Like, just go nice and easy. Don't hurt yourself. Command Genius, absolute pleasure to see you. Radio, I don't remember if I said hello to you, so I'm just going to say hello again. Hope you're doing well, bud. Hope you're doing real well. And I'll tell you what, but the immediate thing that definitely has happened is that getting back into the working out, it helps with my mood. For sure does it help with my mood. It makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel like I've accomplished something. It makes doing other activities easier immediately. It also, really helps if you've got, pent up anger. My left butt cheek. How about that, grinning? You happy? You happy? Good to see you, bud. And the Serge Petoka, glad to see you back too, bud. I am streaming on TikTok. I just want to let you guys know. I hope you guys are all doing well out there in TikTok land. I don't talk to the TikTokers for obvious reasons. What do you got going on? Yep, I guess that's it, Ronnie. I can't believe the Ronnie thing is living on. What a legend. What a legend, Ronnie. Ronnie McNutt, wherever you are, I just want you to know, you live on in infamy, my friend. Holy cow. I thought that would be gone by now. I thought that people wouldn't give a shit at all, but what an impact. What an impact, yeah. Well, it's less trolling. It's just nonsense. It's just meaningless. And the people who really do want to have a meaningful conversation and actually learn something or participate or challenge, they come on over to YouTube, right? And they put in the effort and they take the time and they come on over to YouTube. It's in the description, right? You can find it out. And so I don't mind that at all. Just pretend it's the CPC ML flower. Pretend the trolls are actually comrades. No, I gotta tell you, I don't actually mind the Ronnie thing. I don't. It's sometimes people say I'm reading too much into it, or I'm making too much of it, or all that. But I don't think I am. I think everybody's dealing with the absurdity of this life and the absurdity of what it is to be alive in this world, and this is one of the ways that they're dealing with it. And I don't think there's any. Initially, I was like, oh my god, this is kind of grim. But you know what's grim? Society, capitalism. Capitalism's pretty grim, and so my left butt cheek sounds like a restaurant. Hilarious. I was trolling two ANCAPs earlier today. They're such snowflakes. And yes, Anne Ryan did die on welfare. Dude, if you think that Anne Ryan is worth... if you think you should build a political philosophy off of Ayn Rand, right? Ayn Rand, rather. To me, it's not much different than if in like 100 years from now, people were like basing a political philosophy off of Stephanie Myers, right? That they were looking at like... because honestly, like, Ayn Rand was essentially just a simp for industrialists. She obviously just had a crush on like an industrial. She was just like big, powerful man, right? That's her whole shtick. Like, her entire philosophy and her entire ethos can really just boil down to, I've got a crush on a big, powerful man. That's fundamentally her entire belief system. And if you are basing your belief system off of her, then you might as well just base your belief system off of like a romance novelist, right? I read 50 Shades of Grey, and that's what I'm basing my... Like, it's as unserious as a person can be. And I don't think that you need to take, like... I genuinely don't think engaging with Ayn Rand stands on their philosophy, like, literally just make fun of them for, like, oh, so it's, like, literally a romance novelist. Like, shut up. It's so embarrassing. It's so fucking embarrassing. Ben asks, is there a way to filter out the TikTok people from the chat? Nope. Gotta grow the channel somehow, Ben. Gotta grow the channel somehow. Yeah. Serge just saying, I feel pretty lost and confused. Yeah, Serge, that's a good thing to say. It is. It's a good thing to say it out loud. And I mean it. If you're sitting in your apartment or your room or wherever you're sitting, right, and you are feeling lost and confused, say it out loud to yourself. I feel lost and confused. Because the moment you say it, the moment you manifest it into your reality, right, that's when you can actually do something about it. That's when you can actually say, like, you can't find, you won't look for a light post. You won't try to not be lost if you don't admit that you are lost. And admitting that you're lost in the first place, not a bad place to be. And make it real for yourself. Make it real for yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with myself, people around me. Yeah, for sure, dude. For sure. Life is, like, and the society is structured to be confusing. The society is structured to be atomizing. The society is structured to be difficult, right? On purpose. Because if you're atomized and separated and isolated, then you have to rely on the capitalist systems, and you have nothing else to do. You've got nowhere else to turn. And it really is that simple. Yeah, all my life I pretend everything is just normal and I act professional and tolerate everything. Yeah, yep. They got you trained. They put you through 18 years of school, maybe longer than that if you went to university, right? And the whole thing wasn't to teach you a skill. It was to teach you to just put up with their bullshit. How well can you put up with capitalist bullshit? If you can't put up with capitalist bullshit very well, then you get a C or a D. Maybe you barely graduate, right? And that just stays on your record. And if you're really good at tolerating capitalist bullshit, then you get the A and maybe the scholarship, and you get to go to capitalist bullshit school where they teach you how to tolerate more capitalist bullshit, and maybe even teach you how to dispense capitalist bullshit. And that's the entire purpose of school. The entire purpose of school is not to teach you a skill or a knowledge or anything like that. The entire purpose of capitalist school is to teach you how to tolerate being treated like a piece of shit, being treated like a commodity, to expect to be commodified. That's the purpose of the education system. And you can see it. Like once you realize it, once you go, oh, the emperor has no clothes, once it dawns on you, you can look back on your history, you can look back at your school years, you can look back on that time, and you can see it. It's naked, right? You sat at a desk and learned nothing important, and if you complained about it, you got a lower grade, right? They were training you to just put up with capitalist bullshit. That's all it is. That's all it ever was. And we're just now getting to a point, I think, where we can just start saying, like, we don't need to tolerate any of this. We don't need to put up with any of this. Like, you need to survive, right? You need to survive in the corporate environment. You need to survive in the work environment. You need to do what you can. Try to find whatever connection you can. But, like, you don't need to sacrifice your whole fucking life to it, right? And the sooner you can get out of that shit, the better. And the best thing for everybody to do is to just stop talking about it with a like, oh, life is shitty and I hate my life and that's all that kind of stuff. Because that lets the idiots, right, the winners of the Joe Rogans of the world, be like, oh, these guys are just down on themselves. They just need to buck up. And just start talking about it factually. And the facts are that this society is crumbling. It's collapsing under its own weight. And it's doing absolutely nothing to actually lift anyone up. It's doing absolutely nothing to actually help people become part of a wider society. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. And there's no reason for us to say anything else. Right? Yep. And even the way they talk about it. Yep, those people that are complaining are just the losers. Well, so what if they are? Right? So what if they are? Like, first of all, it's not a game. Right? So building a society and building a civilization isn't a game. Right? Where there are winners or there are losers. So already out the gate, you're just like... you get into the mindset of these people where they thought it was a game. And they think that this is something, and I'm gonna win, dunking on you. We all die. Like we're all like losers. Like there's no finish line. Like you don't get a reward. No one's gonna kiss you gently on the forehead, right? It's all just like an abstract existence we have. Like, and then on top of that, like, so what if they are the losers? So if people who lose a game should be poor and homeless on the streets? Is that what we're saying? I think that we need to play a better game, right? I think we need a better game. Speaking of better games, oh! Say hello to Milo. Say hello to Milo. Milo. He's a little dog with a funny face. Milo. He's a little pug. Isn't that right? What a sweetheart. What a sweetheart. Yes. Oh, big yawn. Big yawn, Milo. Oh, my goodness. You're so cute on camera, Milo. Oh, my God. He's just going to steal the show is what he's going to do. Did you know? Millions of people from around the world are seeing you now, Milo. You have anything important to say to them? You have anything important to say to them? I would like treats. That's what Milo thinks. That's what Milo thinks. Yes, what a cute little boy. My cute little guy. Here we go. Where'd your ball go, dude? Go get it. It's not a game. It's like, oh, a baby is born and dies premature, no reason. Yeah, the idea of a loser is ludicrous. It is ludicrous. Like straight up, like, so what if we are losers? Like, so what if we are, right? Don't you, I don't need to talk to you, Evan. Learn how to talk to people properly, dude. Like, there's basic manners. Like, I don't need to talk to people who don't have any manners. If you're so dumb that you don't know what basic manners are, then I don't need to interact with you. Very simple. Yeah, the lack of a social union is hideous, right? Like, we don't need to, like, we need to actually be cohesive and be a people. We need to actually live and like and if the structures around us are not attempting to facilitate that, then eventually the people will abandon those structures back. Right? It's extremely straightforward that, like, people are going to put together that there is no reason to engage in these systems. There's just no reason. And as the systems get more entrenched and more frantic to save themselves, they're going to become more fascistic and they're going to become more violent, which might let them survive for a little while longer, but like the people are not going to be happy about it. We're not going to be sitting around singing the praises of our civilization and our society if it should the institutions within begin using violence against us to assert themselves, which seems to be where we're going, which seems to be the case. Yeah, I mean, it's no, and it's incredibly odd to me, Serge. Like, it's incredibly odd to me that, like, we have this concept that, like each of us is just randomly generated into the universe. We're randomly generated into reality, and we're just here for a little while. And yet people have an idea that it's like, yeah, it's 100% and 100% totally my hard work that ended me up in the position that I'm in. I'm like, seriously? It just seems like an embarrassing claim to make, right? Like, obviously the structures of the society, the position that your parents were in, the position you were born into in the first place, the connections that you had, the people who you went to school with, the society that was around you, obviously that has much more to do with how well you're going to do and what position you're going to find yourself in. And if the structure of the society says 10% of the people will come up into this echelon, 20% will be here, and like down the list you go, and then 10% will live in poverty and be homeless, right? Because of the structure of the system, and that's how it needs to go, then that's what's going to happen, right? Like, if you structure it so that people cannot be homeless, then people will not be homeless. And if you structure it so that people must be homeless, then people will be homeless. Like, it doesn't take a frickin' genius to figure this out. It doesn't take a PhD scholar to realize that if you have institutions like the Federal Reserve walking around and saying we're going to increase unemployment, well, then you're going to have unemployed people who end up homeless. And that's structural. That has nothing to do with how hard they work, right? Because it must be the case, right? And there's so many things where this is the case. Like, when I was going through university, everybody was like, train to be a teacher, train to be a teacher. There's going to be lots of teachers' jobs. Well, everybody did that. And so if everybody does that, if 100 people train to be a teacher and there are 10 teacher jobs, then 90 people just get completely fucked. Completely fucked. Loaf, an absolute pleasure to see you, friend. Good to see you. I jump on your video and discover the coolest possible desktop background that has ever been made. Thank you. For those of you on TikTok, it's I highly recommend that you gravitate over to YouTube if you would like to see Karl Marx, eyes blazing red, holding the hammer in one hand and the sickle in the other, on fire. Hope you're all doing well out there out in TikTok land, guys. What's Ben saying? China holds standardized tests that cause kids to collapse from anxiety. Didn't happen under Mao. Their system is shit, in my opinion. I think that, honestly, Ben, can I tell you? I think that China is... I tend to agree with you, like, in one regard, which is that the people of China are feeling anxious, and that the ruling class is under a great deal of pressure, and so they're taking that pressure out on their citizens. I think that that's true, generally, because I think that all of China knows it's about to go to war, and that the war that they're about to have is going to be defining, Like, I don't think that they are, the people of China are under any illusions. I don't think that they're sitting there, like, maybe they're sitting there being like, I hope it doesn't happen. But I think that the majority of them are fairly aware that the American war machine is coming and that it's going to be real and it's going to be significant. That when Pelosi visited Taiwan and the Chinese military was deployed, they sent like aquatic tanks along the border of China. They were running major drills. They did flyovers over Japan. They were doing very serious military shows of strength. And the general attitude amongst the Chinese was, yep, yeah, that's fucking right. You want to come over here? You want to wag your dick in my face? Well, take a look at what's going to happen. You've got Xi Jinping in his speeches talking about anybody that wants to come and mess with us is going to face a great Chinese wall of steel. Like, they know what's coming. They know what's coming, and so they want their kids and their people to be prepared to militarize and mobilize quickly. And there's no reason we shouldn't talk about that. And there's no reason we shouldn't be serious about how serious that situation is for the Chinese. And so, yeah, I suspect that the children are under a great deal of stress. I suspect that the citizenry are under a great deal of stress. I suspect that the ruling class is under a great deal of stress because everybody knows that America is not just going to stand by and watch China do what it's doing. It's not just going to stand by and be like, it's not going to do a trade war exclusively. It's not going to try to engage in economic warfare exclusively. There will come a moment where the American military mobilizes and goes after the Chinese, and they know it. And to me, that's the, like, critiquing China and talking about China from any perspective other than that perspective, to me, is a bit naive. Like, it's a bit naive. Like, you can say a lot of stuff about China, but if it isn't with this understanding that they see this massive looming threat coming that has proven time and time and time and time and time and time again that it is willing to completely level and enslave societies. Like, if you're not taking that seriously, then I don't think the critique you can have of China is a very serious one. Like, that's that's pretty serious. And the conversation surrounding Deng is quite, like, there are pluses and minuses. My position generally is that, first of all, Deng won the political fight, so the majority of the Chinese people went along with him. It wasn't like he did a coup or something. He went legislatively, and so the majority were on his side. And I think a lot of people were looking at Mao and thinking, okay, like, thank you, Mao. Like, you did a good job. You got us to this point, but now it's time to move on to other ideas. And Dengism is the reason why China is in the position it is today. And again, you can critique it, but I think that those criticisms that you have, the Chinese people themselves are aware of and are thinking to themselves, well, how do we continue moving down the path? We're not staying here. We're moving forward. And how do we continue doing that? So I have hope for China, and I think that hope is couched with this serious situation and the serious belief that America's going to attack it, and it's going to be the most serious conflict of our lifetimes. No doubt. America will not fade away into irrelevancy as China overtakes it on the world stage without a fight. And there's no reason for us to be anything but deadly serious about that. And that's the core of everything we're seeing. So, might as well actually report on some news while we're here, right? Wouldn't you like some news out in TikTok land? Why not? Right? Brazil. Bolsonaro's supporters storm the National Congress. So we have yet another sort of reflection of the January 6th sort of quote-unquote insurrection attempt. Hey, wondering Leo, I hope you're here to be a beautiful person, bud. I hope you're having a beautiful life. The This is what we like. This we are seeing a reflection, right? If we are seeing a reflection that the fascists are brewing up and coming up, and this is sort of the proto-fascist movement. That once they gain more strength and gain more power, they'll start actually doing this stuff successfully. Come on, Wondering Leo. That's not a serious question, bud. If you love communists so much, why don't you move to one? Let's see. I mean, it costs money to move. The just basic practical realities of it. I don't really care to abandon my own country when I feel like it needs voices like mine the most. And also, like, it is fair to point out, bud, like, there's a quasi-genocidal sort of aspect to this comment, right? That I'm just not going to let slide by me anymore. You're essentially saying people who disagree with me politically should be relocated to other places. And no, it's kind of a dingy comment, frankly, that I don't really take very seriously, because there's such obvious reasons why it's not the case. Like, are you going to fund my move? Are you going to help me move to a place where I don't speak the language and I don't know anybody, right? Are you gonna help me do that? No, right? Like, I'm just not very cool with it. Like, it seems very like you might as well just be saying go die. Like, sorry, bud. I don't take it very seriously. If all communists moved to a communist country, that country would be the only communist country. I mean, yeah. Adam, how you doing, bud? Serge, so not everyone needs to pack up and leave. Yeah, what if your parents left dysfunctional places? I mean, people do leave dysfunctional places, like refugees flee places, right? Like, that's the great North American grift these days. Go destroy countries, right? And then have the people who can afford to flee those countries come to your country, right? America drops bombs on Syria. America drops bombs all throughout the Middle East. America drops bombs all throughout South America, Africa. And then those people flee those places if they have the wealth to do so, and they come to the place where there are no people getting bombed. And those people aren't getting bombed because America hasn't started bombing itself yet. One of the grateful things that I have about this Brazil story, Bolsonaro supporters storm the National Congress, is that it's not successful. They're more virulent, certainly. The January 6th insurrectionists were cleared up relatively quickly. The Brazilians are actually more persistent. And so the National Guard and the police forces have actually had to deploy some more serious tactics. Yeah. Police are still in the process of clearing riots from the Supreme Court headquarters. Brazil's Chief Justice Rosa Weber on Sunday said the country's Supreme Court will work to ensure that terrorists were made an example of. Supporters of the former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro stormed the National Congress building in Brasilia earlier on Sunday. Hundreds of people invaded the building, calling for military intervention to overthrow President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who was inaugurated a week ago. Like, so much for democracy, right? Like, these guys are like chowderheads. Like, these guys are like total chowderheads. Oh my goodness. In other news, if a snap election happened now, conservatives would win 141 seats and liberals 139, says Fournier and Nanos. That's like a statistical tie, basically. Like, it could go either way. And Philip Fournier, of course, runs the website 338 Canada. And it's pretty ridiculous to me. Like, we are still at a position right now where the NDP are still only polling to get as many seats as the Bloc Québécois. Jagmeet Singh needs to resign. He just needs to resign. Like, it's as simple as that. He's not a credible threat. He's not actually building power for the party. He's not actually making gains. He's not actually getting seats. He seems to me to just be a way to diffuse leftist energy here in Canada. Like, that really seems to be what he's doing. That what we really have is a far right party called the Conservative Party, a Conservative Party called the Liberal Party, and then a Liberal Party called the NDP. And I just think that people are funneling their energy, continuing to prop up the Trudeau government, and the NDP are not actually gaining any power, which I find to be, like, pretty shocking, frankly. Like, one would think that there would be a desire amongst the populace at this point, especially what with inflation, especially what with the chewing away of people's civil liberties. One would assume that they would be looking for something a bit more fundamental of a change, but looks like we just want to double down on a failed system that's collapsing underneath our feet, right? Like it's we're literally facing like a major privatization crisis in the health care sector. Liberals seem to just be sort of shrugging about it, you know. Oh well. Ultimately, it comes down to the populace. Populace seems happy being betrayed and abandoned, so we're just going to continue being betrayed and abandoned. Like, it's no mystery in my view. But the really hard truth, and the thing that nobody will really ever report on or talk about with much seriousness, is that most people don't vote anymore. And this is the reason why. Because these parties no longer represent their desires or their needs, right? These parties no longer actually help anybody. Yeah, Jugmeat was laughed at in the House of Commons for talking about stuff that will happen when I'm Prime Minister. Oh yeah, people laugh, do all kinds of stuff. Canada is fall apart from inside. They taxing the shit out of the farmers. Yeah, we put food on the table. I mean, I'm from a farming community. Like, I'm from a small town community in Manitoba. I know all about this, Leo. Like, I know all about this. Like, to me, the idea that the Conservatives, or that the rural side of Canada has, that we're going to vote Conservative and they're somehow going to alleviate these problems. Conservatives are not going to alleviate any of those problems. Like, they are not going to actually respond rationally to your issues. That's because they don't actually work for you. They're not actually interested in working for you. They're interested in your vote, so they're going to say what they want, what they can, and they're going to try to whip you up along, like, culture politics. That's what they're going to do. They're going to whip you up along these, like, woke identity politics lines, right? And they're gonna appeal to your desire to be a man again, right? All that kind of stuff. But when push comes to shove, right, they're not going to turn to their owners, right? We're talking about Galen Weston, the Irvings, right? We're talking about the real owners of the society, the people who own the country, who own the society. They're never going to say to them, like, hey, you got to pay more taxes. Like, hey, maybe we need to balance things out a little bit, right? And if they don't want, like, straight up total collapse, then they need to tax someone, and that's going to be you, right? That's going to be you. And any small scale or mid scale farmer or agriculturalist, industrialist, entrepreneur of any sort is the person who is going to get taxed, and who is the person who is going to receive a larger burden by the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP, because all of them work for the same people, and it's not going to change. It's not going to suddenly be the case that these guys are going to go, yeah, that's right, we're going to absolutely take care of the average citizen. Like, they're not interested in that. They're not incentivized to do so. They're not interested in that. All of Canadian governments is quite stupid. I say it usually to municipal, but that doesn't work. Like, it's I mean, it's the reason I'm a communist. Like, the goal of communists and the communists is to foment a revolution, ultimately. Because we have experienced a coup. Like that's the hard reality, right? That we have experienced a coup. That the corporate sector has siphoned up so much wealth in the society that they have purchased the legislative branches of the society. That our electoral branch and do you think an election is even likely this year? I mean, does it matter? It makes for good theater. It makes for good theater, and there is like a cultural import to it, I think, because I think it does make it like that's essentially what our politics has become, right? Is that it has very little to do with our material reality and our material conditions, and has more to do with who we are, quote unquote, who we are as a people, right? That we are defining ourselves culturally through our politics. But it doesn't actually have anything to do with improving the quality of life of the citizen or building a nation. It doesn't have anything to do with building a civilization. So elections in this country are all about just how we define ourselves, and are we a diverse, multicultural nation of people who are accepting and inclusivity and all of this, or do we care about traditional family values, the history of Canada? You know, this sort of rhetoric, right? This is the battle lines of our politics, and no party talks meaningfully about improving the actual quality of life of the citizenry, and when they do, it's in a very, very like Jagmeet Singh is like, tax the rich 1% and bail them out when their shit fails again. Right? Like, you can just listen to Jagmeet Singh talk about, like, when he talks about our telecom system. Here in Canada, we spend the most amount of money for our telecommunications. We spend more than any other developed nation, and we get the worst service. Right? And what's the solution that Jagmeet Singh is coming out with? We need to introduce more competition. Just neoliberal bullshit, essentially. That the problem is that we need more competition. We need to do capitalism better. Like, no, nationalize this shit. Like, why is it that the furthest left political party is not just standing up and saying nationalize it? And the reason why people do not come out and vote is because there is no serious alternative or serious option on the table. The choice is between some foofy-haired idiot named Justin Trudeau, who's only the prime minister because his daddy was named Trudeau, right? Saying, feminism is the feminists, feministiest, and we need to be the feministiest. And Pierre Poilievre being like, Jordan Peterson is in free speech with the trouble of your rights and tolerance. And then just Jagmeet Singh basically doing AOC shtick, right? None of them are actually giving you any choices or alternatives, right? None of them are actually saying anything in regards to what's a vision for Canada or a vision for the future. None of them are talking about our education system. None of them are talking about our healthcare system. None of them are talking about anything meaningful. Homelessness, right? They're all just babbling on about bullshit that nobody should care about at all in the middle of a fucking real significant crisis. But they always frame this crisis as if it's like this natural event. We're all, oh my God, there's an inflation crisis going on. There's a housing crisis going on. It's like a tsunami is happening. Oh, what can we possibly do? We just need to react to this tsunami that's happening that we are helpless to prevent. And nobody's actually standing up and saying, what the people who own you are creating the inflation. The people who own you own the housing market. The people who own you are the ones that are responsible for doing this in the first place. And it's the reason why they can't meaningfully talk about it or create meaningful solutions, because they're owned by the very people they would need to confront, right? That we should nationalize these things. We should nationalize the telecommunications system. We should nationalize the healthcare system. We should nationalize the education system. We should make education free for people. We should make our healthcare free for people. We should make our telecommunications free for people. The internet should be everywhere all the time. We should make systems that are accessible, and if the capitalists complain about it, then we should say, good, that means it's working. it's good that you're complaining, capitalists, because if you hate it, then that means it's successful, right? We need to chase these capitalists out of our political system, but we all intrinsically know that these people are bought and paid for. So if there's an election next year, who gives a fuck? Like, I mean, I'll comment on it because it's culturally interesting. I think it's baffling that the Conservatives have a single seat. I think it's baffling that the Liberals are even in a minority. Like, literally, they're playing a game perfectly with one another. Like, they're allies, obviously, and the goal is to just make sure these two political parties keep power amongst each other on behalf of their owners. Like, that's obviously what's happening. But what we see with communism, it doesn't work. There isn't much order in it. Dude, I don't think you know anything about communism. Like, the Chinese communists seem to be doing very well. The Vietnamese communists seem to be doing very well. You could take a look at, like, the Soviet Union when they were actually embarked on the communist project. Like, these guys were the first people into space. Like, this fucking ridiculous idea that the capitalists babble on about, where they're like, communism never works, that's why we spend billions of dollars to bomb it. Like, if it doesn't work, then why are you bombing it all the time? Like, come on. It's just this, like, hysteria. Yeah, anyone excited about our new F-35s? UK has 20 of them, but have less than 20 pilots capable of flying them. Apparently they're too complicated and dangerous to learn to fly, so no one wants to learn. Like, why are we doing this? Like, what are we doing? Like, what, for real? Like, what are we doing? What kind of ridiculous situation are we putting ourselves in, where we literally are, like, our cities are crumbling? Like, you take a look at Detroit. Detroit's like the poster boy of this, right? It's like a abandoned, ruined city. It's just like ruins, and we're seriously standing around to buying these fucking toys so that what Flyboys can be like, yeah, the new F-35, Top Gun, yeah, let's play some touch volleyball. Like, we're just baby people. Like, we're just baby people. We don't care about things that are tangible and real. We're living in this, like, mythical culture where we believe that Santa is real. Like, it's really where we are. We just think that, like, Santa is real, money is real, sacrifice breathable air and drinkable water for money that doesn't exist in the first place, so that, like, a handful of bankers can go have sex with children on Epstein's island. Like, that's what we're doing. And we are going to pay a heavy price for it. We're going to pay a heavy price for it as a species and as a people and as a civilization. Like, America and Canada are facing, like, the OECD has Canada as going into a recession that might last 20 or 30 years. Like, we are going to pay a heavy cost for this absurd, childish behavior. And our complete unseriousness as a people, our complete inability to actually demand that literally anybody talk about something serious. Instead, we're talking about defrauded idiots like Peterson, or we're talking about how important it is that that we have women represented in the workplace, right? Because you can be a gay trans minority as long as you show up to work on time. Show up to work on time, right? You can be whatever you want. Show up to work on time. That's what matters. Like, you're from Manitoba, go find a creek if you don't want to buy water. Yeah, they'll arrest you for it. Like, everybody owns something, right? Everything's owned by somebody. Like, this idea that you're just free to go live on a piece of property and, like, all that kind of stuff. You know, wondering, Leo, here's a question I'd like to ask you, right? Where'd you get your land from? I always like to ask conservative farmers this question. Where'd you get your land from? Did you work hard and buy your land? Damn, really? 20, 30 years? Can you bring that up for us? Oh, let's see if I can find it. See if I can find it very quickly. OECD, Canada, recession. This isn't the article I was really thinking about, but what was the friggin'... There was, sorry, man. Hold on a second. Yeah, here you go. BCB, CBC. OECD predicts Canada will be the worst performing advanced economy over the next decade and the 3 decades after that. This is from the Business Council of British Columbia, right? I'll let you read the article. I'll put it in the chat for you here, but it's fairly clear. The OECD has Canada pegged worst performing advanced economy in the next decade and the 3 decades after that. And there's a reason for it, right? We've sold our economy. Like, we've sold our economy. Like, we don't have a fucking economy. And anytime anybody complains about, quote unquote, the economy here, they're just complaining about rich people. People are like, oh, if you do that, that'll hurt the economy. You mean the rich people? Right? Yeah, so you got it from your family. Right. So where'd they get that land from? Right? Like, do you think everybody just gets cheap land given to them by their family? Do you think that happens for most people? Or do you think that that's kind of a luxury and a privilege that you have? Right? But most people don't get free or cheap land given to them by their parents. Right? That's just a hard truth about what it is to be alive in the world. No, here's the but. Here's the but. But I know all about this dude. Like, Wandering Leo, man, the narrative is as simple as this as far as I'm concerned. Right? At some point, your family was a family of immigrants. Right? That they likely moved to the prairie provinces. They likely moved and became farmers, taking advantage of what was called the Canadian Dominion Act. Right? Yeah, the First Nations thing, right, is definitely real, but conservatives rarely care about that, so I rarely bring it up when it comes to talking to conservatives, right? That your family likely immigrated and likely took advantage of something called the Canadian Dominion Act. You can go look it up, where immigrants were allowed to come to Canada from Britain and get land for basically nothing, right? It's the largest government handout that has happened in the history of the nation. The Americans did it too. It's called the Homesteaders Act, right? And then that land passed down from family to family, right? You got your land from your family. So you're the beneficiary of one of the largest government handouts that the world has ever seen, right? So I have a real hard time taking conservatives and conservative people very seriously because of this. Because what you end up with is you end up with a whole group of people who are sitting on land that was given to them by the government, complaining about people wanting government handouts. It's just frustrating. Do you have any book recommendations? Just finished some Angela Davis. Daniel Charlatan. Charlatan? I hope that's not Charlatan, bud. That's an unfortunate last name. Hello, my name is Daniel Lie to Your Face. Daniel Grifter. I'm just messing with you, Daniel. Great question. I always recommend Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges' work is really, really good. I also find Richard Wolff to be really good. I misspoke. I misspoke, Ben. I misspoke. That's a very fine distinction, but you're right. I'm getting pegged recently these days by my own people, by my own followers, for I overstate my case. It's something that I'm working on. I'm working on that personally. That I'm in the ballpark, but I'm technically incorrect. And so it's good of you to point that out, Ben. Thank you. Yes, Canada is not... It's not going to be 3 decades of recession. It's going to be 3 decades of the slowest growth rate. Right. So that's different somehow, I guess. Okay, Milo, stop freaking out, dude. What are you doing? Is it this? Oh, I know what you're after. My little dog is after peanut butter. Isn't that the best? My little dog is after some peanut butter. It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Book recommendations. Socialism for Dummies or whatever. I don't remember the name of the book offhand, but it's just like he breaks down his arguments and his concepts of socialism and communism in a very straightforward way. That's really, really accessible, like really, really easy. Like, which is something that I'm really thankful for Richard Wolff. Like, I've heard people critique Richard Wolff for various reasons, but the one thing that I don't think you can ever take away from him is that he's like the very, very front of the making communism accessible and understandable. Michael Hudson is another good one. Mark Blythe is pretty good. I mean, Noam Chomsky forever. And absolutely Michael Parenti. If you've never read Michael Parenti's stuff, Black Shirts and Red Shirts, Michael Parenti is like absolutely crucial. And if you don't care to read his stuff, he's got some really, really good lectures where he talks about, because one of the most common things that you hear from capitalist supporters is this idea that, oh, communism doesn't work or socialism doesn't work, right? And and he basically looks at it and he's like, what are you talking about? Like, of course it does. Like, of course it does. And he just kind of goes through it and talks pretty openly about, and talks about how weird and strange Western leftists are. I love the statement he made where he says, Western leftists seem to support every revolution except the ones that succeed. And it's from Parenti that I get this sort of sense of being a little bit more open to the idea that the countries who have actually had a successful revolution and the countries who have actually successfully moved their societies away from imperialists or monarchists are probably more equipped and better equipped to deal with the realities of attempting to manifest some kind of socialist or communist project in their countries. And just because they're doing something that steps outside of your ideological idea or theoretical idea of what is or isn't real doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong, right? Doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong. Buy land for yourself. Cute. That's cute, dude. Have you seen the price of land? Like, have you seen the price of land, bro? Like, that's not a serious comment. Straight up. Like, this, oh, yeah, your dad did that. Good for your dad. Like, good that your dad did that, bro. Like, times change, eh? So, like, what, 60 years ago, your dad did a thing? Oh, buddy. Milo. Holy cow. Sorry, guys. Milo, you can't be barking like that, dude. You can't be barking like that. Okay, guys, give me a second. I'm going to save my dog. I'm going to get him some peanut butter. That's going to save you guys. Give me a second. 1 second. I can't stand this friggin' conservative shit where they're like, oh, just go buy some land as if land hasn't gone up 100 times. Like, oh, no, my dad did that when he was, when land was a nickel. He bought some land and he spent 10 raspberries for it, and now it's worth $100 million. Like, come on, man. It's what you sound like when you talk like that. You sound like the first guys who came in for the gold rush. And they came in because there was gold. There's gold in those damn hills. There's gold in them there hills, right? And so a bunch of guys came in. They rushed in to get gold, and during a period of time where they could literally take a pan. They could take a pan and put it into the water, right? They could put it in the water and pull gold out of the fucking water with a pan, right? And now what you sound, and guess what? There's no more gold in those hills. You know what? There's no gold. They took it. All the panhandlers went through, and they scooped all the gold out of the hills, right? So what you sound like is a guy saying, oh, just go put a pan in the river. Just take your pan and go put it in the river. Oh, yuck. Well, too bad. Too bad. That river's already been panned. Right? Nah, Seraphim, we got a guy who basically is living on his daddy's land, talking about how his daddy had to work hard, right? And thinks that he has advice for anything. What? Why don't you want to work for it? Like, shut up. Like, shut up. Go keep living and working on your daddy's land that your daddy gave you for free, right? That he got from the government in the first place. And stop lecturing us about how to live our lives. Fuck off. Like, no, for real, dude. Fuck off. You're not an interesting person. Like, you're embarrassing. You literally live on your daddy's land, talking about how your daddy worked hard. Shut up. You have nothing to say to us. Go live and die for free on your dad's land. Like, fuck off. Ugh. Complaining about taxes, no less. And then he's going to turn around and sell the land for like millions of dollars, right? That's the best part. That I literally know people who did this. They got free land given to them by their dad, and then they turned around and sold it for $2 million, and talking about how people just need to work hard, and they're like 400 pounds. Like, literally, for them, hard work is just walking to their van. Like, just fuck off. Ugh. Yeah, no, he obviously doesn't understand the current economic situation. Like, pretty straightforwardly. Yep, family farms in the prairies have been disappearing, replaced by corporate ones. That's absolutely the truth. Because the family guys, like the guys who are living on the family farms, this is the best part, right? These guys are such dunder chowderheads, right? That, like, they're selling the family farm, and they're getting like $2 million for it. But then, what are they... So they're going to, what, give that money to their kids, I guess? But what are their kids going to do with it? Right? Better to let the kids have the land, frankly. So, like, these boomer types are just, like, embarrassingly selling the farm and getting little paper dollars for it, because the paper dollars really matter. The land doesn't matter, right? No, the paper dollars, that's what really matters. We got us some paper dollars. That'll really secure our futures. They certainly won't fuck us over somehow by just, I don't know, creating an inflation crisis, right? Like... But, like, what do you expect, right? Like, what do you expect? You have these guys who genuinely their whole life has been living on a patch of land, right? Just kicking dirt around, thinking that they can tell people how to live their lives when they've never gone anywhere, done anything, or know anything. Literally had the land handed to them in the first place, thinking that they work hard even though they fucking don't work over the winter. Like, they don't work over the winter, right? You know what they do over the winter? Fucking kick snow. They, like, go snowmobiling. Like, they I know these people. I know who they are. And their worldview is so hysterically childish. Like, literally Santa is real level childishness. And it's just fucking unbelievable. There's a reason why the society is in a massive decay. It's because all of these people own the land and the property, and they think that that's what life is. They have no fucking idea what they're even talking about. Jeez Louise, man. Like, the younger generations often don't want anything to do with the land. Like, dude, if I even had an acreage, if I even had one acreage with like a shitty shack on it that had some basic amenities, like, I'd just do some beekeeping. I would keep bees. I know how to do that. The trouble that I'm having is that I can't get any fucking land. Why can't I get any fucking land? Because land's expensive, right? And why would big monopolists want anybody to have access to land? Like, that's the first step in somebody becoming your competitor, right? You need to chase all your competition out. You need these chowderheads that are coming in here, like, they're so detached from what's actually happening in the world. And even if everything goes tits up for them and everything's totally fucking horrible, they'll always just sell their land and be fine. So they never actually need to face anything meaningful. There's no such thing as a problem for these guys. Where like something isn't going to blow. Like their biggest problem is that they've got to pay a little bit of tax on the $1 million they made this year, or the $100,000 they made this year, right? I'm just a rural farmer. I put seeds in the ground, and that's hard work, right? And then I take all winter off. Like, just fuck right off. Fuck right off. This fucking exhausting lecturing attitude, as if they have anything interesting to say. Jeez la fucking Louise. Ugh. Speaking of interesting things to say, investors own nearly a third of homes in major Canadian markets. That's from the Financial Post. Right? Statistics Canada data highlights how real estate boom may be heightening inequality. No shit. People who own more than one home account for about a third of the housing stock in some of Canada's biggest markets, new government data show, highlighting how the nation's real estate boom may also be heightening inequality. Multiple property owners accounted for 31% of all homes in Ontario as of early 2020, and almost the same share in British Columbia, a report from Statistics Canada said Tuesday. In the smaller East Coast provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, the share was about 40%, the data show. A 50% rise in home prices over the last 2 years has made the cost of housing a political issue in Canada, prompting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to make home affordability a centerpiece of his government's 2022 budget. No, it's hold on. Prompting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to make talking about home affordability a centerpiece of his government. This is how Trudeau works, right? Trudeau doesn't actually do anything about these crises. He does a little policy shift or something to try to convince, like he did with climate change. Right? We're going to put in a carbon tax, a solution that was given to us by the fossil fuel industry. We're going to put in a carbon tax, and that solves that. We're serious about climate change here in Canada. Yep. Meanwhile, he's given more money to the oil industry than Stephen Harper did. He literally bought a pipeline. He's and Canadian emissions have only gone up. Right? Like the man is a fucking fraud. Across the board. He's failed at everything he's tried. Like, what's the great liberal success story? What's the thing that the liberals can point at and be like, we did it. We've succeeded. Yeah, we've been the leaders of the country now for fucking 8 years. We're serious. Yes, queen, yes. But with the supply of houses for sale still near record lows, prices at record highs, and interest rates set to rise, the barriers for new buyers appears to be getting more entrenched. In British Columbia, the top 10% of owners control 29% of the total value of residential properties in the province. While Trudeau's budget focuses on curbing the role of professional investors and foreign owners from the housing market, the new government data suggests the majority of multiple property owners are just individuals or families already living in Canada. Most own just 2 properties, usually single-family detached houses, and are usually located in the same area, suggesting most are buying the second property for rental income, not recreation. Yeah, I'm rich. You know how I could get richer? I'll just buy this property and rent it. Well, I can't imagine. Where's this rental market coming from? Heck? Because the figures are from the period prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, they may underestimate multiple homeowners' current role in the market. More recent data from the Bank of Canada showed multiple property owners have increased their share of home purchases in that time, while first-time buyers represented a smaller share of the market. The new data on multiple property owners is part of a program started by the government in 2017 to get a better picture of the real estate market after prices exploded in 2017. With rental markets also extremely tight in Canada's major cities, the value of these types of investors has been debated by policymakers. They essentially turn ownership stock into rental. But while the new government report said it could not determine what impact such investment had on house prices, it did conclude that there was an impact on the market. Owners seeking additional properties contribute to increased competition in already tight real estate markets, the report said. This makes it more difficult for prospective homeowners to purchase a home. Which is like the point, right? Here's your capitalist innovation. Here's your fucking capitalist innovation. Like, we've innovated. We found out a way to exploit people's needs. Oh, you need shelter? We're just going to exploit that. We're just going to make sure that if you don't actually pay the cost that we're charging, we're just going to make you freeze, right? Like, that's what they're doing. Ugh. Yeah, I want land for an anarchist community. Yep, fantastic. Depopulation hasn't lessened the price for land, though. Unless you have a contract to raise meat, chickens, or corn, you can't afford the payment. Yeah, I mean, the child care benefit, weed legalization, the child care benefit. What child care benefit? That's Stephen Harper legislation. Stephen Harper was the one that put in the child care benefit. That wasn't liberals. Like, literally weed legalization. They literally changed one line in the code, and that's their major success story. I've got about 25 pounds of mushroom substrate colonizing. It's the only colonialism I support. Mostly gourmet oysters. I'd make a decent farmer. I think most people would make a decent farmer, right? We should be ripping up all the land in the cities. Like, all of this empty bullshit lawn stuff that we're doing seems to me to be like totally ridiculous. In other news, if nurses are outside, something is wrong inside. 7,000 nurses in New York City are on strike. That's the story as I've been told it. And it's about time that what we need in these countries, what we need in Canada and the United States and across Europe is a general strike. That's what we need without a doubt. That we need to disrupt this economy. We need to shut this economy down. We need to make it so that the powerful can no longer exploit us and make money off of the desperation that they themselves are responsible for creating. And we badly need a general strike. If you need a big contract from a big agricultural corporation to own land, then you don't really own the land. It's dependent on your contract. That means they are the true gatekeepers to ownership. Yeah. And I mean, urban agriculture is the future. Honestly, it's going to become a necessity. Like, these big corporate farms, they're going to poison the land. Like, they're going to. They don't know how to not. Like, they're not interested in sustaining. That, like, I don't know what they need to do to convince us of this. Like, I don't know what they need to do it's like we're literally hiring Jeffrey Dahmer to be a babysitter. Like, how do you think this is gonna go? Right? What indication? What has convinced you that handing the keys over to people who have only ever despoiled the land and the water and the air, who have only ever poisoned everything? What has convinced you that all of a sudden now they're going to do it? Now they're going to have a big come to Jesus moment. And they're going to be like, oh, we're very serious now. This time we're not going to do it. If they can make a 0.5% profit increase on today's profit margin by destroying all of the land for the future, they'll do it. They'll do it. They don't care. They obviously don't care about polluting the atmosphere. They obviously don't care about the climate change issue. They obviously don't care about drinking water or clean air or any of this shit. They've made this so obvious. Like, I'm to the point now where I'm happily telling kids, if you're 12 and you're going to talk to me about any of this stuff right now, I'm telling you now, your teachers have nothing relevant to teach you. That what you should be doing as a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, 16, 17, 18, 15, right? Whatever age you are in school, you should be organizing your classmates and you should be having walkouts. You should be constantly walking out regularly. You should pick a day. Wednesday should be walkout day. And you should be constantly walking out of these schools en masse, in droves. The schools have nothing to teach you. They are not fighting for you. They are not interested in building a future for you. They're not interested in protecting you. They're teaching you absolutely nothing. It is legal in Canada to protest. Yet. They haven't made it illegal yet. It is your right as a Canadian citizen to organize protests and protest. And every single person alive should be walking out of every institution they are part of, without exception, constantly. It should become part of our regular culture, because we are not only are we destroying our own countries, we're destroying our entire civilization, but also the species. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, it's fucking ridiculous what we're doing, and frankly, like, it's embarrassing. Like, it's embarrassing. I completely understand why people like George Carlin said that he just, like, opted out of the human race. He just literally opted out. And I'm like, yep, that makes sense. Right? Makes sense. We're embarrassing. We're too embarrassing to be associated with. Like, are you kidding me? This ridiculous, asinine bullshit culture where we're all bickering about, like, critical race theory or, like, manosphere garbage. Meanwhile, the planet is literally on fire. Like, and we just don't give a fuck at all. We just don't give a fuck. We just don't care. Right? It will not be until the fires sweep through our own cities that maybe we go, oh, this was serious. Oh, this was a serious issue that we should have actually seriously cared about. So if I organize a class walkout and everyone does walk out, what will we do? Just go back in? Just go home. Leave. Just leave. Like, just leave. Go somewhere else. Like, I don't know, go play in the park. Go live a life. Go have a picnic. Go do something important. Right? Stop pretending like what these people are doing is important. It's by definition unimportant. Like, they're not teaching you anything. If we go home, what would our parents say? I think that's between you and your parents. Look, I'm not saying there's no consequences for doing this, but I am telling you that, like, is it illegal to leave school? Like, where do you think this goes, Command Genius? Like, where do you think this whole thing, like, how do you think this all happens? Right? Yeah. Like, it is confusing, isn't it? It's confusing that your teachers and your school, it's confusing that your politicians, it's confusing that your business owners, it's confusing that all of these people are doing everything they can to actually destroy the civil society. Milo, dude. Milo, my man. Sorry, guys. My dog is just losing his little mind right now. Hope you're all okay. Hope that didn't mess anybody up. Ugh. Here's a great quote from Chris Hedges. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. It's absolutely asinine that we still, for some reason, take anybody in our society in any position of power seriously. There is almost no one who is actually even attempting to give a shit. And anybody who does anything serious in this society, anything that attempts to actually do something, faces significant and serious consequences for doing so. If I want to organize a huge walkout, no, you don't convince the actual... How would I convince the actual Nazis and fascists? You don't. Like, pretty simple. Let them stay. Let the snot-nosed, sniveling little brats, let them stay. That's fine. Like, you shouldn't attempt... Here's good advice for you across the board, by the way, Command Genius. This is a truism across the board in life generally. Never, under any circumstances, ever have an argument or debate with a Nazi. Never actually engage in the argument. Like, they've already conceded. They've already conceded the arguments. They're not actually interested in being right. They're interested in being strong. That's all they're interested in. They're not interested in being technically correct. And the only time that Nazis actually debate or talk in public is to recruit. That's all they're doing. They don't care if you like put them in a checkmate. They don't care if you defeat them in the field of honor. Like, they don't care about any of that. They don't care if they're going to be embarrassed. They don't care. Like, when Matt Walsh goes on Joe Rogan's podcast and Joe Rogan like checkmates him easily in one thing, Matt Walsh doesn't care, because Matt Walsh understands that what he's doing is recruiting. That he's having a big giant arrow pointed at him and saying, hey, other fellow Nazis, here I am. Find me. I am the Nazi, and you could organize with me, another Nazi. I'm just realizing now that, like, you could clip that and take it out of context and it'd be hilarious. But in any case, like, that's what these guys are doing. And if they debate you, or if you attempt to debate them, then they don't attempt to like debate in good faith. They're not attempting to try to find a compromise. They're just attempting to frustrate you. And I've seen this for sure. They're just trying to make you appalled. That's all. They're trying to make you go, oh, and then like storm off and have them go like, ha, right? Like they're fucking Draco Malfoy or something. Like they don't actually care. Yeah, Kanye has more influence than I thought. Yeah, we've got a kid in chat saying that most of his compatriots are in fact fascists. Like, I'd be surprised if it was most, actually, dude. Honestly, it seems to be. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, but I don't know. Who's to say? Who's to say what's going on with the youth these days? With the youths, and like, there's a reason why the society is collapsing into absurdism. Right? There's a reason why the society is collapsing into absurdism. Just today, right before I loaded up, somebody on the Discord was talking about, oh, come on, where is it? The core movement that exists on TikTok and is spreading around, right? There's this, yeah, there it is. What is core on TikTok? It's both something and both nothing and everything at the same time. That Gen Z is descending into absurdism, into Dadaism, as it used to be called, right? Just the culture is becoming an absurdist expression of itself, right? Like I kind of feel like this this Ronnie McNutt stuff, right? This Ronnie McNutt stuff is part of that absurdist, just crazy nonsense where people don't know how to respond anymore. They don't know how to react anymore. The world has obviously lost its mind. Like, lost its fucking mind. There's no one acting rationally. There are no adults in the room, and the kids know that. Like, that's why I say, like, stop taking your teachers seriously. Like, stop paying attention to these people. They've got nothing to teach you, right? And they're just... the original core videos used to be very common. Yeah, for sure. Right? For sure. Because people understand intrinsically that something's gone horribly wrong. The defenders and the simps of the capitalist system are all frauds. Right? They're all people like Peterson who should have his license removed. Right? The man is literally doxing people who lodge complaints about him. Like... It's and so, like, if I'm a Gen Z kid, like, if I'm 20, like, there's nothing here for you. Like, we're not teaching you anything. You're not learning anything. We're not setting you up for success. What we're doing is impoverishing you, and then probably going to have a draft so we can throw you against the Chinese. Like, that's our strategy, pretty clearly. Doom to Bloom, absolute pleasure to see you. Only after the last tree's cut and the last river poisoned, only after the last fish is caught, will you find that money cannot be eaten. Yeah, a classic quote. Classic quote. Now core is just depressing doomer. There's no hope. I mean, I just think, like, it's normal for people to grieve, right? what one thing that I think is good to think about is that we are collectively as a people grieving the death of our society. I talk about this a lot, and I think it's absolutely true. And once you come to understand that, you can see it a lot more in the culture and a lot more in people, that we are grieving the death of our culture, and that part of grieving the death of the culture is depression. Just depression, despair. It's part of grief. And Santora, absolute pleasure to see you, bud. And the grief that people are experiencing, the grief that people are looking at, because it's become obvious now that we are not going to walk away from this unscathed. That any hope there was for us unifying and coming together and finding a solution and all of that's gone. Right? All of that's gone. That even if we do manage to get through some kind of thing and actually tackle the major issues that we are creating for ourselves, even if we manage to do it, we are definitely going to pay a heavy cost. And that is a certainty at this point. That is a straight certainty. And while that certainty is coming, there are still unhinged lunatics in the society who are actually attempting to convince us that no, the actual problem is that you're not working hard enough. Like, that's actually happening. And there's an entire generation of kids who just fundamentally understand that that's false. That they fundamentally understand that they've been betrayed. They fundamentally understand that the society is not going to suddenly reform itself. It's not suddenly going to come to some kind of come to Jesus moment, unless there is some kind of major confrontation through a general strike, through some kind of mass organization. But that doesn't seem to be happening fast enough. That what we're looking at is we're looking at an absurdist culture where it takes 15 votes to get a Speaker of the House. Like, these guys can't even organize themselves efficiently, and you're turning around and telling me that they're gonna, oh yeah, these are the guys that are gonna solve the problems of the fucking world. So all that we've got left is just grief and absurdism, and we're facing that absurdism and we're facing that grief. And moreover, the people who own the cultural voice pieces, the people who own the cultural media, like Disney, right? They're completely disinterested in permitting this grief and permitting the death of this culture into their cultural landscape. It's just not part of our cultural communication. There is no way for us to come together and have a cultural catharsis. There's no way for us to come together and actually deal with this, given the current structure of the system that we operate in. And the only way that'll actually change is on the streets, right? Is on the streets. Is if people actually get into the streets and actually make a cultural moment happen so that we can have that cultural catharsis. We see a spike in religious private schools trying to eat the education system, so swapping might not always be an option soon if it's not fought for again now. Core is cool. It's just it's absurdist expression, right? Like it's an attempt to deal with the nonsense of being alive during this period of time, right? And the nonsense of being alive is so plain and so clear to anyone with eyes to see it. Like, once you understand that Santa's not real, like once you understand that you live in a society where the every institution has now been arrayed against the citizenry, that with no exceptions, like there is no institution that is actually attempting to seriously confront and deal with these issues. It's just not happening. And the best that we get is platitudes from politicians who then do some kind of tokenism bullshit in order to convince people that, oh, they actually care, when no, they never cared. They just cared that you thought that they cared. That's it. Like, it's a society of grifters. And the entire structure of the society is designed to support, amplify, and reward grifters. That's how you get ahead in the society. If you're an effective grifter, if you know how to lie, if you know how to bullshit people, you can make a lot of money and do really, really well. And you can get elected fucking president. You can become the president of a country if you're a fucking good enough grifter, right? Just take a look at Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump's a fucking grifter. He's very good at it. He's like a genius level grifter. He really knows how to do it. That we're just fortunate that his ambition was only to be the president. That he had no ambition beyond that. That once he became the president, he was like, okay, I'm the president, great. And then he just went golfing, basically. Right? Signed some legislation that Joe Biden would have signed anyway, right? Signed some legislation that Hillary would have signed anyway, right? Like, the Hillary administration doesn't look that much different from the Trump administration, guys. Like, I really hate to break it to you. Like, if you're one of these MAGA guys, like, the Hillary administration doesn't look that much different from the Trump administration. Because at the end of the day, the president doesn't actually make any decisions, right? The president puts his signature on things and then goes golfing. Like, and Trump understood all this. Like, Trump understood all this. Like, people like to peg him. Like, he's like, oh, he didn't spend any time in the White House and all that kind of stuff because he knew he didn't have to. Like, why would he? It would be funny if a far-right prime minister or president said a lot of fascist stuff, but once they get in control, they run their country, turn their country into the Soviet Union. No, they're not going to do that. Like, the Soviet Union was a highly egalitarian society, right? And highly scientific, too. Like, they're the first people into space. They literally went from being like a monarchical agricultural society, primarily feudal, to creating an industrial economy capable of defending itself from the most aggressive and largest military force the world had ever seen in the Nazis. Like, it's very, 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 very unlikely that fascists would attempt to create an agrarian society. It's very, very, or not an egalitarian society. It's very unlikely that they would do that. Like, egalitarian doesn't fit into the ethos. It doesn't fit into the ethos at all. It's contrary completely to it. And I'm just like, I mean, it would be funny, but I feel like if a leader did it, he'd be lynched by his own people, right? Like, it's we're in this real. Yeah, they would be simply removed from power by their own party. That's exactly right, Ben. Like, you and I said it basically at the same time. We're just like, yeah, they would be lynched. Like, they would just like fascists want to attack and assault minority groups. They want to create inequality in the society, right? And they always do so based on, like, well, this is a natural inequality. This is just a normal inequality that exists naturally, and we're just making that inequality entrenched systemically into the structure of the society, right? That's what fascists do. That's who they are. And they're not suddenly going to have a come to Jesus moment and turn around on it. From the National Observer, investigation. Oil giants who, quote, make more money than God lobbied the federal government and got $2.6 billion in taxpayer dollars. Oil giants lobbying the federal government netted $2.6 billion over the past 11 years. That figure comes from self-reported data filed by 11 of the country's largest oil and gas players in the Federal Lobbying Registry, a joint investigation of the Investigative Journalism Foundation and the Canadian National Observer have found. You know what's great? I love that we call it lobbying instead of corruption, right? I love that we've just, like, entrenched in the society this idea that it's totally, totally cool. If you wanna corrupt somebody, if you wanna do corruption, you go ahead with that. Corruption is legalized here in Canada and the United States. Yeah, we're entrenched and embedded in it. But if a society doesn't do corruption, well, then that's a problem. Yeah, that we need to go in there and spread some freedom, right? Like, not only are we bailing these guys out, not only are we buying their stupid pipelines when they fail, not only are we propping up the oil industry, not only are we doing all of that, we're also just giving them money for nothing. We're just handing it over to them. Like what a great grift. Imagine if you could just like go to the government and be like, and I love this. The very same people who work in these industries are the same people who are like, government handouts are bad. Your fucking industry gets government handouts. You got $2.6 billion. Like, shut up. And that's all the liberal government, by the way. Like, that's all the liberal government. Yeah. And of course, the government funding of oil companies spiked with the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. Right? Don't you love that? Yeah, they didn't use that as a fucking cover at all. Right? They didn't use this as a fucking cover at all. Yeah, the Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. Yeah, we're not just going to shovel that into our pockets. Right? That's not going to happen. Yuck. We should nationalize the oil sector, dude. We should nationalize the oil sector. It's crazy. It's insane that we live in a society. It's insane that we live in a society where the energy, the oil production and the coal production and the energy sector is anything other than nationalized. Like, that's nuts. The more you think about it, the crazier it gets. Oh, so instead of the energy supply of the nation in control of the electoral system and responsive to the electorate and responsible to the voters, it's literally owned by some jagoffs who can just do what they like. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And they've got some kind of like, they got this fancy argument like, well, we have to responsibly take care of the efficiencies of the market will respond. Because if we don't efficiently, then competition will come, and the monopolies don't occur in the competition with the in capitalism makes everything better for more money please, more money please. Like, these people are fucking like, we're ridiculous people for even buying this fucking idea. Like, just like, imagine if somebody came to you and said, yeah, hey, I think that I should own your toilet. Every time you want to own, use the toilet, you have to pay me. Like, shut up. Get the fuck out of here. But this is essentially what we're doing. Like, Mustafa Kadam. Good to see you, bud. What would be your rebuttal to a state with a robust welfare system operating under a capitalist framework such as social democracy / the Nordic model? So the only reason social democracies or the Nordic model comes to be and exists in the first place is because of the threat of a communist revolution. That it's the Nordic countries are the ones that are doing the Nordic model, right? Because they are directly beside the Soviet Union. And there are people within those countries saying to the capitalists, we could just overthrow you, you know. Like, we could just get rid of you. There are people showing up at their houses with hammer and sickle signs saying, we need a revolution. Let's get rid of you, right? And so what do the capitalists do? What's the response by the capitalist class under this threat of internal revolution, right? Concession bargaining, right? You let us keep the means of production. You let us hang on to the means of production, and we'll give you more vacation days. We'll sure, Social Security, right? Old age pension, sure. We'll create a nicer version of capitalism under the threat of communist revolution. And then after the post-World War II period, and then the subsequent collapse of the Soviet Union, right, which the Americans helped facilitate, they have steadily dismantled it because the threat of the communist revolution is gone. And so they're starting to attack it. They're starting to dismantle it. You can see that here in Canada, right? That here in Canada, they're going after the healthcare system. You see that in the UK. They're going after the NHS, right? And social democracy, you'll never vote social democracy in. That's not how it works. You'll never get everybody together and go, oh boy, social democracy actually sounds real great. We should all get together and vote for a social democrat. And the social democrat will run and be like, oh man, I'm a social democrat. I'm going to come in, right? They'll literally shoot people before that happens. Like, the people who are in power will literally shoot that guy in front of everybody, right? And just be like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Like, they're never going to let that happen. And so the only way it actually does happen is if the people in power feel threatened and are scared, right? That's the only way it works. And so this idea that, well, you shouldn't be a communist, John. You should, that's too far. I'm a social democrat. Okay. So you're just like a guy who wishes things could be true. You're just a guy who's sitting around being like, it would be nice if we all took care of one another. I'm not going to do anything significant in order to try to fight for that. But, when I go to the ballot box, I vote for the lesser of two evils. Doing my part. Like, womp, 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 womp. Alright, guys. I super need to pee. I'm going to go pee. Stick around. Stick around. I just love the idea of a social democracy. Like, I love the idea that exists in the consciousness of people where the idea that exists where it says, oh, sure, yeah, the powerful went to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island and have sex with children. Like, we know that's true. Bill Clinton was on the manifest. Trump was on the manifest. Gates was on the manifest. A bunch of rich people were on the manifest, right? The rich and powerful, they're raping children, but if we just ask them nicely, they'll for sure give us health care. Like, I just think it's so cute. Such a quaint idea. So, the issue with the social democracy and the Nordic model isn't a theoretical one, but a practical one. Yeah. Like, look, there's nothing offensive. And that's another part of the problem. Like, it's not offensive at all. Like, there's nothing offensive about standing up and saying things should be nicer. Right? Yeah, okay, great. Things should be nicer. That's fine. Like, everybody is going to say yes to that. Right? Yeah, things should be nicer. Right? Like, but how do you do that? How do you make things nicer? Yeah, you're not going to make things nicer by asking politely. Because the people who are in charge are psychopaths. And have made it very clear that they're psychopaths. And, like, eventually these guys are going to rule nakedly. Like, they're not going to pretend. It's a big reason why Trump ascended so quickly is because he wasn't pretending. Like the Obama administration revealed to the masses in a very significant way that the emperor has no clothes. That the change is not going to happen, that the reform is not going to happen, that Wall Street is in control, that the psychopaths are ruling, right? Like, and Trump just came along and was like, yeah, the emperor has no clothes. Like, when Dave Chappelle talks about this shit, like, it's true, it's accurate. What he says is right. That the reason why Trump gained power is because at least he was willing to drop the facade. And the ruling class of America and Canada will drop the facade. They will simply say, yeah, we're fascists. Yeah, we're fascists. What are you going to do? And the answer is fuck all, apparently. Like, we're just going to keep voting, I guess. That'll get them. We're definitely going to get them with the voting. At least I can't hear him pissing this time. Thank you, Grinning. I was singing just for you. I was thinking about you, bud. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Milo, dude, you're going to cause a problem again. Milo, get out of there. See? You tripped over the cord again, you dude. My man. I'm really disliking that you think that this is a toy. But you think it's a toy. Dogs. Right? Am I right? Dogs. Oh. Today's chat is actually like pretty tame from what I'm used to. You guys on TikTok are going easy on me, man. You guys on TikTok are going easy on me. Oh yeah. The Washington Post makes a big admission about Russian interference in the 2006 election. They straight up, what's the exact quote? Now the Washington Post is finally admitting it was all nonsense. Citing a new study, the Post reports that there was no appreciable impact made by Russian trolls operating on Twitter during the 2016 election. Russian influence operations on Twitter in the 2016 presidential election reached relatively few users, most of whom were highly partisan Republicans, and the Russian accounts had no measurable impact in changing minds of influencing voting behavior. Like, this is literally like the platform that the fucking Democrats have been running on. They've literally been pointing at the Republicans and being like, Russian bots, Russian intervention. And now it's just straight out coming out. Being reported by the Washington Post, no, Jeff Bezos' Washington Post, no less. That, yeah, no, total farce, complete fraud, blue mega conspiracy, right? Like it's hard to watch this shit anymore. It's hard to take a look at the society. And like what's super annoying about today's society is that this is how we're working. That the story of the day is hyper controlled. Is tightly controlled. If you stand up and talk about it, you're banned, you're excluded from the conversation, you're shadow banned, you're removed from places. If you try to talk about the story of the day and then give it 4 or 5 years, and then all of the stuff that we were saying turns out to be true, right? And this is one of those stories that while the Russian interference story was going on, the blue MAGA fucking conspiracy theory was going on, if you actually talked about it, you were deplatformed, you were removed, you were silenced, you were shredded, right? You can see that with what's going on today, with situations that are occurring, that if I actually say out loud, I'll be banned again, which is how this works, right? But then in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, right? Everybody will say, yeah, you were right. Yep, all the facts have come out, and that's actually the story. That's actually what happened, right? And it's like, it sucks. It sucks that it is this way. That we're only willing to tell the truth after everyone has moved on from it. We're not willing to actually tell the truth as it's happening, or tell the truth about situations as they occur. And for as much as people on the right are screaming their heads off about free speech and all this kind of stuff, nobody gets silenced faster than commies. Nobody gets silenced faster than the communists, right? No matter how much, no matter how true that they're talking about. Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones! Dude, when I was growing up, there was a pizza place in Manitoba called Mr. Bones Pizza. And the theme song was, Mr. Bones, buy a slice, Mr. Bones. They got bought out eventually, but thanks for that. Thanks for that memory. I really appreciated that. May I ask what you think about Venezuela and what socialism did there? So, when you are talking about Venezuela, there is an extreme tendency by people who are critical of Venezuela to exclude the sanction regime that the United States inflicted upon Venezuela, and that Venezuela was in the process of socializing its society as they do. It takes time, it takes effort, and the criticism, and I think this is a fair criticism that people even like Noam Chomsky were leveling at Venezuela, is that they had really based their economy off of oil, that they were really struggling or really lacking in creating an economy that was based on a lot of different resources or ideas. And so when the market crashed, when the oil crash happened in, I forget the year exactly, but in and around 2012, right, the Venezuelan economy took a dip. And then right as the Venezuelan economy took a dip, American forces basically put its boot on the back of Venezuela and just pushed it into the ground. And put heavy sanctions on it. That's when the whole Maduro bullshit started, right? Where we were all supposed to be like, Maduro's the actual president of Venezuela, which has kicked off like a whole, like, and now that's been completely recanted. Nobody buys that shit anymore. Guaido has been completely ousted of this position, and the whole idea that comes out of the right during this period of time, where the narrative became, look at Venezuela, right? Socialism never works. Look at Venezuela. You even had people like Peterson parroting this "look at Venezuela" line as if it was serious. And that whole conversation died out in the West when the UN sent a human rights investigator from like the High Council, who basically came out saying, yeah, I mean, Venezuela has problems like any country has, but the sanction regime is what's doing it. Like, I went and spoke with basically everybody across the country, and all of them said essentially the same thing. It's these sanctions that are just fucking killing us. And that's the same story with Cuba. That's the same story across the board, right? There's tons and tons of different countries who are really suffering under the jackboot of American imperialism because there are battleships off their coast that won't let their boats through. Like, it's real straightforward. Like, it's real straightforward shit. And outside of that, the literacy rate in Venezuela has skyrocketed. The healthcare system has improved dramatically. The quality of life amongst the poorest citizens have improved dramatically. The electoral system there has proven to be resilient. The idea that Maduro is Milo, you've already been down, dude. You went down right at the beginning of the thing. You're just scratching because you're bored. Just wait. You're a good boy. And so, like, does Venezuela have things that it needs to improve? Sure. But what's actually happening in Venezuela, because of the sanction regime, because of what's been going on, is that the country has been militarizing. That the military is losing its mind because the citizens of the country know what's happening. They understand that if we don't actually respond by increasing the ranks of our military force and getting trained militarily, the United States is going to come in here, right? Like this is the biggest difference, I think, between what happened post World War II and what's happening today, is that the countries of the world are no longer under the illusion that America isn't going to act like fascists and Nazis. They're no longer kidding themselves that America is like, they saw what happened in Southeast Asia. They saw what happened in Indonesia. They saw what happened in Venezuela, Laos, Cambodia, North Korea. They saw it. The rest of the world saw it. And it's just like, oh, like, America cannot be negotiated with. If they want to come in here and destroy us and level our country, they will. And I think the thing that really, and the 2001 invasion of Iraq really convinced a lot of people outside of America. And then finally the destruction of Libya and the ongoing conflict in Syria. Like, if you're living in Venezuela and you are of a socialist mind, you're joining the military. And the military ranks under Maduro swelled. The military enlistment went from like a million citizens to 2 million citizens. Just like blew right up. Meanwhile, the Americans are struggling to recruit. Why? Because everybody knows what's going on. Because everybody's looking at fucking the world and saying, yeah, I don't want to be a stormtrooper. And that's exactly what the Americans are. The Americans are the bad guys. 100%. 100%. It's not close. That if you live outside of America, you do not see much of a difference between Hitler's Germany and what's going on today in America. It is a terrifying imperial state that is attempting to influence the rest of the world exclusively through violence. It is not rational. It is not interested in diplomacy. Its quote-unquote rules-based order is literally do what we say or we'll bomb you. Like, that's what's happening in the world today. And if you think otherwise, you're fucking fooling yourself. Like, you are fucking fooling yourself. The rest of the world thinks that we are terrifying Nazis. And they are correct. Vladimir I. Longdong. Always a pleasure, bud. Every time you come in. Low quality bait. It let me go on that tangent, so I'm fine with it. Vincent Thomas. How about Bolsonaro supporters occupying government buildings? We reported on that earlier, Vincent. Absolute pleasure to see you. Yeah, right? Like, it turns out that fascists don't like democracy. Who fucking knew? You mean Juan Guaido? Vladimir Adongdong says, hi, John. Yeah, hello. Yeah, Venezuela could be the Norway of South America if the United States would get off their dick. Yeah. I'm thinking that we should revive Coliseum sports. I think we could make good use of the billionaires in that regard. I mean, we've got the stadiums, right? We've got the stadiums. So we already have the stadiums. We already do MMA. We just need to merge these two, right? We just need to merge them and then have the combatants actually kill one another. That's or if not kill one, we need like a process. Like when one guy knocks out another guy and the guy's on the ground, we need somebody to be like, thumbs down, and then they go over and kill them. And that's like the core difference, I think, is that we've evolved as a species to the point where we're not willing to just execute people, right? We're not willing to just like, oh, you just die in public in front of all of us for our entertainment. We're not quite at that point, you know? Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll get there. We'll see. We'll see. I do think that there is going to be some, in my lifetime, there is going to be some kind of major public punishment for people who are actually a threat to the state. Like, you take a look at what they're doing to Edward Snowden, or more importantly, Julian Assange. You take a look at what they're doing to Julian Assange, and that's very private, right? That they're keeping him in isolation, they're torturing him, right? They're basically punishing him for outing the war crimes of the state, but eventually that kind of thing will just be done in public, and they'll just be like, yeah, whatever, let's just show people don't do this shit. You do this shit, and we're just gonna shit all over you. Right? If you point at us and actually talk about the things that we don't want you to talk about, then we're just going to take you out to the town square and nail you to a board, right? Which is what they used to do. So will we devolve to that point? Will it become so, like, will the powerful feel so detached and untouchable that they feel they can get away with that kind of thing. And, I mean, I think so. Like, really. And, I mean, it's only a matter of time before... Like I don't think it's going to be someone like Donald Trump, but it'll be like his sons, right? That, like, sure, Donald Trump is a pedophilic rapist. Sure. But he understands, like, that he can't just do it out in public. But his sons are not like that. Like, his sons are nuts. And the older these guys get, the more detached and deranged they're going to be. And, like, the sons of Donald Trump's sons are going to be even worse. They're going to be even more deranged and even more detached, right? Like, it's and it's going to be something like that. It's going to be like Elon Musk's kids, right? Like, all it really takes for this shit to go sideways, guys, is like a genuine, true blood psychopath who is actually like a serial killer, right? Like, I think that a lot of these guys are actually psychotic in a way, but they're not like serial killers. They don't get their kicks from killing people. They get their kicks from misery and power and all that kind of stuff. But they don't actually need to, like, peel the flesh off of someone in order to feel something. But wait until one of them does, right? Wait until one of them does. And our system is going to give that guy $100 billion. Congratulations, you're born. You're the kid of, I don't know, Gates or Elon Musk or something. And you literally get off just like steadily slicing a piece of skin off of a child's face. Like, it's coming. Like, it's coming, baby. And we've built the perfect system for them. We've built a system that lets them do whatever they like. And they're going to do it. I can see Don Jr. all coked up presiding over public floggings, yeah. I would pay $1,000 to see a Musk versus Gates bout. Who would win? Who do we think would win? Bill Gates or Elon Musk? Huh? Who wins in a fight between Musk and Gates? I'll look over at TikTok for this one. What do you guys think? Right? What do you guys think? Gates versus Musk. Let's see it in the chat. Musk versus Gates. Who thinks? My money's on Muskie. I gotta tell you. I think Muskie's got a bigger frame. I think he's a little bit more, like, wildly, right? Gates has always been a little kind of like a snivelly little brat. He's always been a bit like, nyeh. Like, I think that basically anybody could walk over to Bill Gates and just, like, physically take him. And I think that's true. Like Elon Musk lifted that sink, right? Elon Musk lifted that sink into headquarters, right? Remember when he did that? He lifted the sink into Twitter headquarters, right? Yeah, engaging with the TikTok chat. Yeah, dude. No, the TikTok chat's a fucking disaster, right? Yeah, you think that's a fight? Wait until you see the fight in the breadlines, right? Like, it's a fucking disaster over there, dude. It's like literally watching a dumpster fire. Like, nah. The only reason I do the TikTok thing and have TikTok is in the hopes that some people will go, oh, here's a guy who actually seems like he knows what he's talking about, and they'll come over to YouTube, right? And so you sift away the Ronnie McNutt losers. You sift away the, like, communism never works except all the times it does, idiots. And you're left with people who are actually interested in engaging. Like, some of the people in the chat right now came from TikTok. And I think that that's a pretty major success, honestly. I'm very, very happy with that result. And you know, so just let people... Yeah, 100 million dead! Never again! I'm a serious person who thinks serious things! Like, yeah. Gates would win because Musk is a lot weaker than he looks, as he is loose and fast. But Gates could get him due to denser mass. Oh, yeah. Fucking ridiculous. I definitely would pay for this fight, though. I definitely would. Like, if that were to occur, I'd be pretty pleased about it. The problem with Canada's medical assistance in dying policy. Canada's medical assistance in dying program seemed like a step forward for choice and dignity, but it is beginning to look like a dystopian end runaround, the cost of providing social welfare that can beat back the deprivations that make life unbearable. This is from the Jacobin. I always thought legalizing euthanasia was a no-brainer. It seemed to me like an individual choice people ought to have, akin to legalizing abortion or same-sex marriage. If someone is in pain that they decide to end their life, I thought, who are we as a society to tell them they can't? There's also a harm reduction component. If someone is dead set on ending their life, shouldn't we give them a relatively safe, effective option under medical supervision? It would be cruel not to. This was the rationale behind the 2015 Supreme Court of Canada decision in Carter v. Canada, which determined that prohibition of medical assistance in dying, MAID, was unconstitutional. But the legalization of MAID has brought to the fore some disturbing moral calculations, particularly with its expansion in 2019 to include individuals whose deaths aren't reasonably foreseeable. This change opened the floodgates for people with disabilities to apply to die rather than survive on meager benefits, which seems to be the point. I've come to realize that euthanasia in Canada represents the cynical endgame of social provisioning within the brutal logic of late-stage capitalism. One second, guys. My dog is in a crisis. Milo, dude, do you not understand that I'm running a show here? And we're talking about very serious things. We're very serious people talking about very serious things. Don't you realize? Where to go, buddy? Where to go? I don't have it. I've come to realize that euthanasia in Canada represents the cynical endgame of social provisioning within the brutal logic of late-stage capitalism. We'll starve you of the funding you need to live a dignified life, demand you pay back pandemic aid you applied for in good faith, and if you don't like it, well, why don't you just kill yourself? The problem with my previous perspective was that it held individual choices as sacrosanct. But people don't make individual choices in a vacuum. They're the product of social circumstances, which are often out of their control. Oh my God, Milo. Okay. This is over. Come here. Tim Stanton, director of the Canadian Institute for Inclusion and Citizenship at the University of British Columbia, told the Associated Press that Canada's MAID policy is probably the biggest existential threat to disabled people since the Nazis' program in Germany in the 1930s. This sounds hyperbolic, but there are endless examples of people with disabilities who are offered euthanasia as an alternative to living a life of pain and exclusion. And with the impending expansion of MAID to include people with mental illnesses, the problem is only going to get worse. At least 4 veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress have been offered MAID, including one instance where a caseworker told a veteran that MAID is a preferable alternative to blowing your brains out against the wall. Mark Menick, a veteran of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, who on his podcast spoke to the veteran who was offered MAID, told the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veteran Affairs that the individual in question had never even contemplated suicide. He just wanted help dealing with PTSD and other ailments. He expressed to me things were sunshine and roses prior to this phone call. He was feeling good about life, Menck told the committee. Post-phone call, he left the country because he was devastated by that call. In another instance, retired Corporal Christine Gauthier, who is paraplegic and competed for Canada at the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Paralympics and the Invictus Games, was offered assisted suicide, with Veterans Affairs offering to provide her with the necessary equipment. Gauthier had been fighting for 5 years to have Veterans Affairs provide her with a wheelchair ramp. They wouldn't provide the ramp, but they would give her the means to end her life. Veterans Affairs Minister Lawrence McCauley casted doubt on Gauthier's case, insisting that to his knowledge there are just 4 cases with one individual caseworker who no longer works for Veterans Affairs, responsible for all of them. But then again, Maybe not. I feel that possibly this is all that's there, but I don't know, he said. How reassuring. An excellent piece from Global News reporters Brennan Leffler and Marianne Demain headlined How Poverty, Not Pain, is Driving Canadians with Disabilities to Consider Medically Assisted Death, notes the excruciating cycle of poverty that leads disabled people to choose assisted death rather than live a life with barriers to their existence. The numbers are grim, Leffler and Demain note. Looking across the country, provincial disability support rates vary from a low of 205 per month in New Brunswick to a high of 1,685 in Alberta. Try getting by on 1,228 per month in Toronto, or 1,358 in Vancouver, where the average rent on a one-bedroom apartment is about $2,500. The result is that according to a 2017 report from Statistics Canada, nearly a quarter of disabled people are living in poverty. That's roughly 1.5 million people, or a city about the population of Montreal. Joni Cowie, who has cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, Guillain-Barré syndrome, epilepsy, and a fractured back, certainly fits the criteria for MAID, but the meager assistance she receives for herself and her daughter, who is also disabled, has made the pain all the more unbearable. People with disabilities have been put on the back burner and nobody gives a damn about them, she told Global. I've cried a lot at night. I usually stay up a lot of the night. I pray. I pray a lot. In the case of Alan Nichols, demonstrates how uncomfortably permissive Canada's euthanasia framework is. Nichols, who suffered from depression, was hospitalized in June 2019 over fears he was suicidal. Upon hospitalization, he asked his brother Gary to bust him out as soon as possible. A month later, Nichols successfully applied for MAID, not for depression, which is not yet legal, but for hearing loss, which occurred as a result of brain surgery when he was 12. His family, who filed a police report and notified health authorities, said that there was no way he was eligible for MAID, arguing that he had refused to take his meds and use his cochlear implants, which would have helped his hearing. Alan was basically put to death, Gary Nichols said. Sean Taggart, who suffered from Lou Gehrig's disease, chose to end his life in August 2019 at the age of 41, leaving behind an 11-year-old son. While his condition required him to receive 24-hour care, the government would only provide funding for 16 hours, forcing him to pay $263.50 a day for the remaining 8 hours. He called the option of institutionalization, as opposed to fundamentally funded care, a death sentence. Roger Foley, who was hospitalized with a degenerative brain disorder in London, Ontario, began surreptitiously recording his conversations with hospital workers who offered him euthanasia unprompted. In one recording, the hospital's doctor of ethics told him continuing care would cost north of $1,500 a day, the Associated Press reported, which he correctly regarded as coercive. I could go on and on. There are far more reported incidents of this sort of coercion than I have space to relay, and these are just the instances that we know of. When people are living in such a situation where they're structurally placed in poverty, is medical assistance in dying really a choice, or is it coercion? That's the question we need to ask ourselves, Dr. Nahid Dossani, a palliative care physician in Toronto, told Global. Combined with COVID policies that have consigned disabled and immunocompromised people to a life of perpetual self-isolation, a lack of funding for people on disability assistance makes MAID an increasingly palatable solution to ending their suffering. In this context, the cavalier way in which MAID has been implemented in Canada serves as a form of eugenics, where only the able-bodied survive. Many countries which allow MAID have far more safeguards than Canada in ensuring situations like those above don't occur. making it extremely puzzling as to why Canada didn't implement them from the outset. Chief among them is the requirement in Belgium and the Netherlands that doctors must have exhausted all treatment alternatives before offering MAID. Both countries also have monthly commissions to review potentially troubling cases. In the Australian province of Victoria, doctors are prohibited from bringing up MAID at all unless a patient inquires about it. In Belgium, doctors are discouraged, although not prohibited, from doing so. I still believe it's cruel to refuse MAID for people on the verge of death, with no prospects for recovery. But it's even crueler to offer death as an alternative to a properly funded social support system. We've let the MAID genie out of the bottle. There's no going back. We must ensure that our healthcare systems have sufficient resources to guarantee everyone, regardless of ability or mental health, a dignified existence. And in the meantime, you have Ontario, the Ontario doctors, right, have said that their number one health concern is poverty. That there are doctors who say, I wish I could just prescribe prescribe money to people, the way that we prescribe pills. That people come in the door and they tell me about their existence and their lives. And and what is happening to them is that they are experiencing poverty, and there's nothing to be done about it. It's a big reason why I became a proponent of the basic income. The idea that everybody deserves access to food and shelter simply for existing in the society. And that if a society doesn't provide food and shelter to its citizens, then its institutions can be widely ignored because they're not actually doing anything to help us. Rachel Dunphy, hope you're here to be beautiful. Oh, sheesh. It is interesting, Rachel, I'll tell you that. It's, because on the one hand, I do tend to agree with the idea. Like, if I'm literally in pain and suffering and just, like, lying in bed, like, yeah, sure, right? But I've seen enough stories, and I understand enough about this society to understand that people are choosing between facing homelessness as a disabled person or MAID, and that's the choice they're being offered. That literally, like, I've seen stories where like a 60-year-old man is essentially being evicted from his home because he can no longer afford the rent. And the rent increases are basically pushing him out. And he knows that he's going to be homeless. And he knows that when he goes and becomes homeless that he's going to die in the streets. He knows it. And so he's choosing MAID instead. Because that's a better alternative than being destroyed by nature itself. Doc, I got rent problems. I need an extra $300 to make it a few months. I would love a system like this. You know what I would love, Santora? I would love a system where food and shelter were baked in. Where we just assumed that that was just part of, oh, you're a citizen. Yeah, you have food and shelter. Like, yeah, obviously. And it's just, like, not even debated. Like, and if people stand up and try to debate it, they're considered weird little creepy Nazis. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to live in a society where it's like, literally a person can walk into a Service Canada, walk up to a wicket, and say, hello, I don't have a place to live. And the person at Service Canada desk will go, oh, goodness me, you don't have a place to live. Well, fill out this form, right? And then they'll turn to a person who has a bunch of houses, and they'll say, okay, we're taking one of those and giving them to that. And the response I get, of course, from capitalist simps is, well, won't that collapse the market? Yeah. It shouldn't be a market. There should be no such thing as a housing market. Housing's not an investment. It's not a commodity. It's a necessity that people need access to. And if someone doesn't have it, they should get it. They should be able to literally walk into a room, tell someone, and then get a place to live. And it should be that easy. No debate, no conversation. And I would love to live in a society where if somebody stood up and said, no, that person should suffer and work hard, then they were considered a creepy weirdo. Like, I consider people who think that way creepy weirdos. I don't want you near me. I'm not interested in talking to you. I think that you're a weird little fascist. Yeah, every business that uses self-checkout should be forced to give to the community. Like, we should nationalize these things. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. The more you think about it, the stupider it gets. The idea that what we have done is taken a necessity, food, essentially automated it, right? Literally only 2% of the population works in agriculture, compared to like the 90% it was not that long ago. And then instead of saying, oh yeah, everybody should just have access to this, we should build into the structure of our system. We should pay the people who are doing the work extremely well. They should be prominent figures in our society, right? They should have access to the best houses and the best shit, of course, right? They're the people making the food. And then we should eliminate the gatekeepers, i.e. the psychopathic capitalists like Galen Weston. We should get them out of the system and just flow the food into the populace and just say, here you go. You need some food? Here you go. Like, what's the problem? And some of the stupid responses I get from the brain-dead capitalists is like, well, what? People will just waste food. We already waste food. We're wasting 50% of the food we generate, we throw in the bin. Like, we're already wasting. Like, you think it's going to get worse? I don't think so. Like, we're just so fucking brain dead as a people. We're under this idea that suddenly people will just start like piling. They'll take all the food and put it in their house, and then they'll stand there and be like, "Ha! I have the food, ha!" Like, yeah, the fact water is not nationalized made me lose my mind when I was in middle school. Yeah, the very idea that we are taking the thing that everybody needs to survive and saying, this guy should own it. We're a childish people. We're a childish people who should not be taken seriously. Like, really, we should not be taken seriously. Like, when the rest of the world looks at us, what they see is a highly dangerous moron. And they are absolutely right to think that way. Like, we don't take care of our citizens. We don't educate our citizens. We don't try to actually stabilize our own society in basic ways. We're not interested in creating infrastructure projects or unifying projects of any sort. We seem like, what happened through the neoliberal period should convince anyone and everyone that we are dangerously moronic and deeply selfish and idiotic. We took our manufacturing base, literally the beating heart of a stable society and an economy. We de-industrialized our nations. We fucked over our own citizens completely, destabilized them entirely, and then shipped all that manufacturing over to another country that is now dominating us because of that decision. And what did we get for it? We got a handful of pedophilic rapists is what we got. We empowered just psychopaths, nightmare creatures, who are now using the wealth that we've got to buy up all the land and jack the rent. That's what we did. That's what we've done. At no point were we ever interested in building a stable society. At no point were we interested in a culture or a civilization. At no point were we interested in all that. We literally looked at money that we made up in the first place, like made up to the point now where it's not even attached to a metal. We detached it from gold. So it's literally just, we make it. We just print it. It's just $1 on the screen. And we worship it so thoroughly and so much. We go, oh, money, you are the great god of money. Yes, we were. That we are literally willing to impoverish our citizens, poison our land, despoil the water, pollute the air, and then gaslight everyone into believing that, oh, it's a you problem. It's your fault. It has nothing to do with the deindustrialization of the country. It has nothing to do with the extraction of wealth that is obviously happening. It has nothing to do with the policies of abandonment that every institution is following through on. No, it's that you just need to grind set, bro. You just need to grind set. You're not working hard enough, bro. That's what it is. Grind set. Sigma grind set. That's all it is. Fucking Luddites. We deserve exactly what's coming for us. We deserve exactly what's coming for us, which is a serious, significant societal collapse, a massive decline of the value of the dollar, which means that loaf of, like, we're complaining about $30 chicken coming out of Loblaws. Yeah, wait until that's $100, $200, $300, right? Wait until inflation climbs so high that no one can actually afford to buy anything. Wait until rent suddenly doubles. Wait until housing suddenly doubles again, right? Like, it's all coming. It's all coming. Because the capitalists don't know when enough is enough until it's literally at their doorstep. You can take a look at what happened in the Roosevelt administration, the Nixon administration, for the evidence of that. That these capitalists will not move a muscle until their homes are surrounded, which is what we need to do. I know, buddy. Oh my goodness. You're so playful. You're so playful. I got a playful little pug here. I got a playful, oh yeah. I got a playful little pug here. It's because of the energy I'm given, and I think he kind of has to pee. Even though we went out for like a big pee, and you had a big pee, and we did a big walk, you're just being a fussy butt. Aren't you just being a fussy butt? My fussy little butt. My fussy little butt. And he does remind me, he always reminds me, Milo always reminds me to try to focus on the good things in life. Try to focus on the simple day-to-day stuff. The classic stopping and smelling the flowers. The classic just enjoy the cool breeze on your skin. The sunlight. Enjoy the smells and the sounds. Enjoy the wonderful sensation of drinking a wonderful glass of wine. Enjoy existing on a beach. Touching a tree. These are the things that life is actually for. And what life is actually about. That sometimes I worry that all I'm really doing is facilitating a kind of feedback loop of self-loathing or doomerism or deprecation or destruction. And I'm always reminded by my little man here, wise beyond his years, that what life is for experiencing. Life is for experiencing the good things that exist. The smell of grass. That moment where you have sand in your shoe and you've got to take it off. Cloud watching. That's one of my favorite things to do, you know. I've always loved that. Just sitting somewhere and watching the clouds. And at this stage in the game, given the abject and total failure of every institution that exists in this country, a person would be better. We would be better off if the entire nation literally sat in a field and watched the sky than do any of the shit that we're doing today. We would be better off as a people if we simply stopped participating and literally sat on our couches and played video games. We would be better off. We would be a better civilization. And the boomers aghast at that kind of statement soon will be dead. D. Marie, how you doing? Hope you're beautiful. Hope you're being beautiful. I listened to maybe your last live afterwards, and your frustration was really palatable. So looking for the little things is important. Absolutely, Marie. You're right. You're right. And it's important to remind people and to remind myself, that we might be facing a real horror show in terms of the administration, but you can still smell a flower. You can still enjoy a popsicle, right? You can still eat some ice cream. You can still hold somebody's hand and quietly watch a sunset. These things are still permitted. They haven't taken that away from us. Not yet. Oh, and I do think that what you're doing is really important. I learn a lot when I listen. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate that. I try to ground what I talk about in the events of the day, in what is actually happening out in the world. And it's... And I don't really know what to think about it anymore, you know? I think that what we're doing here... I really do think that what we're doing here, and what is happening generally, is that there is a building of power. There is a rolling boulder that is steadily building momentum. And that there is a general sense amongst our societies that we have to move towards a better way of living. And the truth, and I mentioned it very briefly, the truth is that there is something of an inevitability to all of this. Because the very people who are talking about grind set and talking about all that kind of nonsense, well, are primarily old people who are going to be dying. There's an entire generation of people who are upholding this mindset. And of course, not all of them. I have boomers in my chat, and it's not an individual critique. It's not a critique of the individual. It's a critique of the system and the broad generation. That most people over the age of 60 are still voting for this individualist mindset and for this idea that capitalism is good, you just need to work harder. It's dying out literally. That if you are the type of person who has been contemplating suicide, as many of us do, as many of us have been doing, youth suicide is skyrocketing. Veteran suicide is skyrocketing, as my TikTok chat regularly reminds me. Well, here's a piece of advice. This society is going to go through a dramatic change. It's going to go through a dramatic change by definition. And it is a change that is unstoppable, that cannot be stopped. No matter how hard the powerful work, no matter how much money and effort and stormtroopers they throw at it, they can't stop it, because the boomers are going to die, followed by Gen X. The millennials, hello, how are you doing, will be the oldest, and the millennials are looking at Gen Z, who are checking out, who are ceasing their participation in the society. You can read a million articles about this, how Gen Z is checking out, the quiet quitting movement, how Gen Z doesn't want to engage in the workplace, and all of this. And it's because the millennials are saying, fantastic, don't. That unlike the boomers, who are saying, grind set, work harder, you can do it, grind set, oh, you're failing, you're not doing it enough, grind set. Millennials are saying, fuck all that. Like, we're caught in it. Like, we can't get out of it. We're stuck in it. But we're not going to watch our kids get ground up and betrayed and abandoned. Like, work hard for fucking what? For who? To do what? To destroy this place? No thanks. So there's change coming. And it's not going to change because of a political movement. It's not going to be like Obama hope and change. It's not going to change because of some cultural figure. It's going to change because the ethos of a brain-dead generation is going to die. Simple as that. So stick around. Stick around just to see what it looks like. Stick around just to watch it happen. That's what I'm doing. You should join me. Oh, I'm going to have a nice glass of wine when this cast is over, I think. There's a half hour left on the stream. Yeah, I got a nice bottle of wine. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I have tomorrow off. It's going to be good. Today's a big, long day. I'm sleepy and tired. It's not going to stop me from enjoying that glass of wine. I tell you what. I tell you what. I listened to an interesting lecture today. Not today, yesterday. About this youth suicide situation. How kids are committing suicide at much higher rates. And this fellow was talking about how people commit suicide. Everyone has a death instinct in them. Everyone has the desire to die. But that instinct is not a desire for literal death. It's a desire to kill the person that you once were. But we don't have in our society a cultural expression that sense of death that teenagers and early 20 people are feeling, the angsty teen, right? It's a trope, basically. We don't really have a cultural expression or a cultural understanding to say to these kids that what you're feeling is not a desire to actually kill yourself. It's a desire to kill the person who you once were. To cease existing as a child and become an adult. Or at least pursue that. Pursue adulthood. And so bereft of that cultural expression, all that's left is the actual material movement towards it. Is to actually commit suicide. Is to actualize it. Manifest it for real. And this is something and this really kicked me off into thinking for myself, because I just turned 40. I turned 40 3 days ago now. Yeah, 3 days ago now. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, well, isn't that interesting? Because I know for myself, like, I think it's normal for people to think to themselves from time to time, I should just fucking kill myself. I think that that's normal. Again, as my TikTok chat always reminds me. But I do think that it is, like, when I turn 40, it's a moment for me to say, that 30-year-old man no longer exists. The 20-year-old man who I was once, the teenage boy I used to be, all of them are dead. I am all that remains. This is the foundation from which I work upon. And instantly, when I had that realization that the thoughts that I were having were not literally let me pick up a gun and literally actualize my own suicide, but just that instinct, that desire for each of us to say to our past selves, you no longer exist. You are dead. And this is true even scientifically. The body recycles, every cell in the body recycles itself once every 7 years. So that means if you're still bearing a scar, you still have some old trauma, or still that's you carrying that. Because the body recycles itself. I find that to be very interesting. You literally become a different person. You're literally not the person you were 7 years ago. And if you're holding, can you imagine? So that means that the people who are holding on to a grudge longer than 7 years, they're holding on to it. Literally. Seems to me to be much better for us to just let these things go. To let the system move us forward without them. Seems like it would take so much less energy. It'd be so much easier for all of us. But that's not what we're about. That doesn't seem to be what we're about. Oh, I know my little guy. Oh, I know my little guy. You doing okay? You know what, guys? I'm going to end the stream early today. I'm tired. I worked a day today. My little guy needs to go down to pee for sure. He keeps looking at me with those eyes. Yeah, I know, buddy. So I am going to call it. I hope you're all doing really well out there. It is a beautiful world. It's cold right now. It'll get warm soon. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.